I was reflecting on the health and well-being observation earlier. I'm approaching a certain age. You can guess later. I don't think that's part of the Q&A, but you can if you like. And I've decided to do a triathlon. And I've decided to do a triathlon in June. And so you've got to do a run, a swim, and a cycle every week, basically, to build myself up to be able to do this in June. So I got in last night, and I thought, it's great, there's a gym. So I had fish and chips, 3 gin and tonics, and went to bed. So I am the Chief Customer and Innovation Officer for AXA UK and Ireland. And interestingly, until I got this job, we didn't have anybody with the word customer sat in the UK Executive Committee, which is interesting given an organisation the size of AXA, and interesting given some of the observations and some of the values we've got around customer first. So, we are still on a journey, I would say. This is what I'd like to cover over the next sort of 20-25 minutes. For those of you that don't know who AXA are, that's who we are. Numbers on a page. In terms of the UK and Ireland, so the UK business is an insurance business, selling general insurance to both individuals and to businesses of varying sizes. And we're also a health business through our AXA PPP brand. We also have an operation in Ireland selling general insurance both in the north and in the south. And interestingly, I've got customer numbers on there. Again, for the last 18 months has only been the period by which we've started defining some of our business success in terms of customer numbers. Historically, it's been the usual financial diatribe that you see up there: debt ratios, leveraging, solvency, turnover. But actually, part of the reason I think I've got the job is that I'm a fundamental believer that if you get it right by customer, all the other stuff on that page will come. So let's talk about customer. I have a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old son. And so the reason that Facebook isn't on these three is he said, "Dad, that's just so your generation." He doesn't use it. Now I'll show you something on YouTube later. But what is interesting is the dynamic of power and knowledge and access has changed. What the internet has given customer, like never before, is control, is power, is knowledge, is the ability to shift. And if we do not, as an organisation, respond to that knowledge and power and control from our customers, we will fail as an organisation. If we don't see those trends coming, I guess we can all cite Kodak and Woolworths and all that kind of stuff. What will happen is they will move on and they will find it somewhere else. Because they can find it somewhere else because they type some nice little search terms in Google and away they go. This is a customer experience, trying to put the characteristics of what good customer experience is into 6 pillars. It's done by KPMG Nunwood, some of you may know it. But actually for me it's quite a reasonable articulation of some of the key things that we as an organisation try to focus on and some of the challenges that we have with customer. So I'll go from my right to left. So personalisation. There's a lot to be said about data, and I'm sure over the next 2 days you'll hear more about data. But for me, it's about information. Data in itself is a row of ones and zeros. Actually, what you really want to know is how that gives you insight into your customers and how that enables them to have an experience that they are looking for and not to have the old adage of getting spam emails for stuff that they really don't want. So it is important that you do personalise your communication with customer, whether that's in the way you communicate, whether that's in the offers you present, that's in the dialogue that you have, or the fact that you're joined up. So a lot of our focus is around moving from a multi-channel environment in terms of communication to what we call omni-channel. And in simple terms, that's just taking all the forms of communication and joining them up. If you think what you are as an individual, you don't communicate in one form. You'll ring, you'll text, you'll drop a comment on social media, you'll maybe do an SMS. There's maybe a bit of live chat. You've got to be able to join that up. You can't have those as an organization in silos. Because if you do, I spoke to you yesterday, oh did you, isn't going to work. Integrity. The insurance industry, in the height of the banking crisis, as defined by Net Promoter Score, were less trusted than banks. And only slightly more trusted than estate agents. Apologies if there are estate agents in the room. Now that is for a business that pays on average about 97-98% of all claims that are made by its customers. But if you were to ask our customers, how many claims did you pay? You'll all have a number in your own head, I'm quite sure. But on average, it varies somewhere between 60 and 70%. Small print, dodging it, trying to get out of it, don't want to pay out, trying to make it difficult. That's the perception of our customers. And we have to change that as an organization if we're going to be credible. And I'll come on to that later. And that leads to expectations. The digital world means things need to be faster. Things need to be simpler. But actually, peer-to-peer referral is still the largest form of recommendation. It's just digital peer-to-peer referral. We use, TripAdvisor have got their feedback site, we use FIFO, other forms of feedback mechanisms are available. But the reality is, people look to people like them to decide whether to purchase with an organization. And what those people think are important. And the transparency that you give those people to talk about your organization is also important. Because whether you like it or not, people are talking about your organization. We had a debate inside our organization for about 6 months around using something like FIFO, which is a public feedback mechanism. And it was, but they may say bad things about us. Well, yeah, they might, but they're saying them anyway. If you believe they're not saying them anyway, then actually you've got a far bigger problem. So better to publicize them and deal with them, and to the form of resolution, respond. If you were wrong and made a mistake, say you were wrong and you made a mistake and rectify it. Actually, a lot of the advocacy that we get from customers is as a consequence of turning round an unfortunate experience into ultimately a satisfactory outcome. Complaints are a huge source of where you're going wrong as an organization. And both individually in terms of turning those customers around, or collectively in terms of understanding the root cause of the challenges your business face, it's an important part of that feedback mechanism. Time and effort. We are lazy. Well, I am. Told you that, I went for fish and chips last night. We are lazy. People want it quicker, people want it simpler. My children multitask about 6 or 7 things, but have an attention span of about 20 seconds. So if you ain't capturing your audience in 20 seconds and they don't know what it is and they don't know what they want to do next, forget it, they moved on. So you have to make it simple. You need to understand your customer in terms of the time and effort they're prepared to give you. Nobody sits there, well, some people might. The vast majority of people don't sit there and go, oh good, my insurance renewal's due, there's a good couple of hours I can spend this weekend. You want to make sure you've got it right, you want to get it done, and you want to move on. Empathy. Still far too many organizations talk in product terms, revenue heads, They talk in terms of what it is they want to sell to their customers. They don't talk in terms of what the customer wants and how that joins together. And therefore, the biggest feedback that we get as an organisation is, you don't understand me. And if you're trying to serve customers, you don't understand me is a bit of a problem. Because you're having bad conversations. And if you're having bad conversations as an organisation, that customer is not going to get out of that interaction what they want, and there's a higher propensity for them to talk to somebody else who does understand them. So what are we trying to do as a business? We're trying to do something called payer to partner. Payer to partner, in simple terms, the insurance industry waits for stuff to go wrong and then tries to fix it. That's exciting, isn't it? So it waits for people to be injured. It waits for things to burn down, to be flooded. It waits for car accidents. It waits for people to become ill and then goes, I can help. That's not the most inspiring, whilst it fulfills a huge service and a contribution to the UK economy, and I'm not decrying the industry we're in because it does a very valuable job. Wouldn't you rather, however, avoid those incidents in the first place? Wouldn't you rather have a connected home that tells you when your pipe's about to burst so you can turn the water off so your house doesn't flood? Wouldn't you rather have a blood test that tells you the propensity you have to certain illnesses and what you can do to manage those conditions as an individual so you avoid them in the first place? Wouldn't you rather protect yourself? I mean, we work with, in terms of AXA research, with driverless cars. And whether you like the idea of driverless cars or not, I don't. I'm a control freak, so frankly, letting anybody drive me anywhere is a bit of a difficult choice for me. But actually, if you compare that to the accidents caused by human error, I don't know, yeah, there was an incident in the States that was caused by the software going wrong and it had an accident. I get all that. But how many accidents happen every day because of human error? So it's also about not providing solutions for today. It's also around making sure that you're keeping one eye on what's coming in the future and being at the forefront of that debate and at the forefront of that change so that you can help your customers adapt and protect themselves better. So how does my business set itself up? It starts with insight. So there are about 57 million people in the UK. There are about 5.5 million businesses. Actually, what you need to understand is how those individuals and businesses think. So back to the point earlier, the empathy point, you need to understand what makes them tick. You need to understand what they care about. And from a financial point of view, they need to be a segment above a certain number, otherwise all the effort isn't going to be physically worth the return. Forgive me, but that's standard economics. But it can't be too big either. Because actually when it gets too big, it gets too cumbersome, and you don't provide the personalization that those customers require. So I'm looking around the audience. Women as a customer segment is all very nice, but you're about 51% of the global population. That's quite a lot. And you don't all think the same. You don't all have the same life experiences. You don't all have the same needs. We're doing something at the moment with what we call the sandwich generation, which is basically largely middle-aged females, to be fair. And what they're doing is they're looking after their elderly parents through their care and their care management, but also they're responsible for managing their children, schools, out-of-school care. If they're ill, guess who's off? They're also sometimes managing brothers, sisters, other family members. And what we're doing is we're talking to that population and we're saying, what would help you? And at the moment, we're in the process of developing a communication app that allows those individuals, not the people that are actually going through the care process, but those individuals to get the support so that they can get some time back to themselves. Because they're time poor, they're all over the place. And actually, we had an example, and it was one of our employees, actually, where they weren't actually looking after their own condition because they spent so much time looking after their elderly parents and their children that actually what they were doing is they were sacrificing themselves. And as most people who, my mother's the same, my wife's the same, the last person they will think about will be themselves. So what we're trying to do, and what their biggest issue is giving them their time back. So you've got to start by understanding your customer. And as an organisation, what we say is, well, okay, if this segment is, let's say, 5 million, how much does AXA already have of that segment? What are the products that we have? How does it perform? What are the characteristics? We then go through a research phase, both quantitative and qualitative, and then go, okay, tell me what are your pain points. Take me through your life cycle. Take me through your challenges. And from there, we start to build proposition. And we take a little bit of insurance and a little bit of health. But actually what is becoming more apparent, back to the payer to partner debate, is microservices. What I mean by that are those things that create everyday interactions that help people on a day-to-day basis. So we have an application called Business Scout. What Business Scout basically does is it aggregates the social media for our small businesses so that they can communicate better through social media. Because that's the skill set that we have, and we're giving it to our customers to say, do you know what, we can help you get out there and communicate to your existing and potential customers. And why wouldn't you reuse the skills and the capabilities you have in an organisation and replay them back to your customers? So you then go through the proposition phase, and this goes through a couple of 3 virtual circles that then basically goes, well, you said this, well, would this help? Yes, no, well, I kind of meant that, but actually that's more important. And then what you end up with is a proposition that's fit for purpose. And in terms of that proposition, we might already have 70 or 80% of that within the organisation. But we certainly won't have all of it. And we certainly won't do it in a way that's ideal. And that's where innovation comes in. Innovation for me, there's little I innovation and there's big I innovation. Little I innovation is enabling your workforce every day to respond to the issues and the challenges that your customers give them and make them better. To have the freedom and to have the empowerment to fix it. Not just for that customer, but actually if it's communally true, to be able to implement that change inside the business. What I'm talking about more here is sort of big I innovation, which is the fundamental shifts, whether that's driverless cars at an extreme, or the gene analysis we're doing to support our health and well-being proposition. It's things that our customers say that we don't have available or don't do in a way that they would like it done, that actually, do you know if you did that bit, that would differentiate you, that would create value. Digital. When I started this job, I asked my team and a number of other stakeholders, what do you mean by digital? And I probably got as many different answers as I asked questions. Digital for me in this sense is just, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but it's a means of communicating with your customer. It's just another form of communication. So I'm not going to get embroiled in the technology. And we do map, we have online quote and buy journeys, and customers can go in and do that, and they're supported by live chat, and yes, that's all digital. But this is a means to engage with your customer. So not only is it your quote and buy journeys, but it's your content management system. And coming back to personalization, if you don't understand who the customer is coming into your journey, and you're presenting bland, generic web pages, customers are going to bounce. You've got to take the data from those customers and present something that's relevant. And trust me, there is a plethora of data out there that can allow you to do it. You don't need to present static, boring, wordy web pages. So ideally what we're doing on digital is starting to build web pages and content that are based on that customer segmentation in terms of the characteristics that they have. Who are they? How did they get to us? Where did they get to us? What did they do before they got to us? So we're presenting something relevant. And brand. There's books and books on brand. I mean, simply for me, brand is allowing your customers to know what you stand for and whether you're interested in them or they should be interested in you. The insurance industry doesn't particularly do brand very well. There are possibly two notable exceptions. LV on the general insurance side and Vitality on the health and well-being side. Now what they've done, and they did it for two completely different reasons actually, but what they've done is they've started to create a return on brand investment over and above the norm. They outperform their peers in both markets. And they do that by creating an emotional connection with that customer. Customers buy with their heads, but they have to be in with their hearts before they buy with their heads. So actually what they're doing is they're creating a differentiation through, I want to be with people who are insured by. I was interested in the reference to Apple earlier. Before I came down today, I was mentally counting the number of Apple devices that we have in the house. There are 4 of us. We have 16. I know. And I know that the functionality of a number of those devices and the cost of a number of those devices I can happily get elsewhere. We won't buy them because I want to be with Apple. My kids want to be with Apple. My wife wants to be with Apple. That's the emotional connection they've created. We don't even think about anyone else. And actually they retain us because when something goes wrong, they're pretty damn good at sorting it too. This is broke, get you another one. This don't work, okay, I'll fix it. But what we've created is an emotional engagement with that brand. So I'm just going to finish by showing you a little video. So when I came into this role, we'd done a number of TV adverts. Some were more or less successful than others. But what the video you're about to see, and it's been on TV, is was born out of research we did with our customers. And the way we're trying to connect our purpose, which is empowering people to live better lives, and our strategy, which is pair to partner that I articulated earlier, is a sentiment we call restless for a reason. And that is, we won't stop trying to make things better. So this is our attempt at that emotional storyboard.
As I cross the raging sea, waves are crashing over me. They drag me down, they drag me down, but I will not drown. And I shall rise, oh well, I shall rise again and again. I shall rise, oh well, I shall rise again and again. I shall rise, oh well, I shall rise again and again.
One interesting anecdotal story. That's a story about our research into prosthetics. Interesting, when we went on this journey, and we do, invest in prosthetics, as an organisation, we spotted that certain parts of our product range didn't cover prosthetics. So what we did is we changed it. We said that was wrong, and now what we do is we do cover prosthetics as part of our healthcare product range, without exception. So for me, what Brand has done there is actually quite impressive. It's changed the organisation for the benefit of the customer, which is where we should start. But actually in this example, it was where we ended up. Thank you.